Your thumb is hovering over send, but you delete the honest message and instead type, "No worries at all," even though they've canceled again and you rearranged your entire evening to make this plan work. For the third time, you add a smiling emoji but your jaw tightens. You put the phone face down, pretending that cheerful reply belongs to someone easier, someone who never notices that the friendship only moves forward when you push it. The screen lights up. With their quick heart reaction, a hollow pressure settles behind your ribs. The conversation is neatly closed, but the actual disappointment remains untouched, shut outside the exchange by one small symbol that asks absolutely nothing of you. Your body registers it before the story you tell yourself does, shoulders heavy, breath held, fingers reaching for the phone again just to check whether you somehow sounded cold. You're accepting another small abandonment, making sure you do it with enough warmth to keep the connection comfortable. Instantly, you begin explaining their behavior to yourself with impressive generosity. They're busy, overwhelmed, complicated. The only circumstances that never seem to qualify as relevant to the friendship are your own needs, your effort, and your repeated disappointment. You review every good memory to prove this imbalance is temporary. You take one rare, thoughtful gesture and use it to cancel out months of silence, delayed replies, and plans that existed mainly because you organized them. By 11:30, you're defending them before an imaginary jury while simultaneously prosecuting yourself for needing more. It's an exhausting court case. Considering the other person hasn't even opened your last message, you decide to pull back. You'll protect your energy and wait for them to initiate. But 3 quiet days pass, and it feels less like information and more like a punishment. So you send a meme, restarting the friendship yourself before the silence becomes a conclusion. The paradox here is that the less they offer, the more valuable each scrap of attention feels. Scarcity turns ordinary replies into proof that the connection is still worth saving. Seeing the imbalance clearly would force a second, more painful recognition. Your effort might be the only thing maintaining a connection their effort would let die. This habit of accommodation doesn't stay confined to one friendship. At work, you become the colleague who remembers birthdays, checks in after bad meetings, and covers favors. When someone lacks curiosity about you, you call it a different communication style, because admitting that the care rarely travels back makes the imbalance harder to excuse. In close relationships, you listen through every crisis and make room for their complexity. Then you shrink your own difficult news into 2 sentences. The second their attention begins drifting, you hide your needs before they can inconvenience either of you. Alone at home, you scroll through old photos after another unanswered text, using history to argue with the present. The friendship once felt mutual, and accepting that the memory is doing most of the work makes the current silence far too sharp. In social groups, you protect them from criticism. You translate their absence, telling everyone they're lovely, really. You become both their friend and their unpaid public relations department, because naming the imbalance exposes how long you've been defending it to everyone. Watching yourself this closely has a private cost: constant self-adjustment, asking less, waiting longer, sounding lighter, and finding increasingly elegant ways to avoid placing any demands on the relationship. We call this reduction patience rather than admitting it is gradual self-erasure. You feel strangely loyal to their potential. The person they occasionally become is attentive enough to keep hope alive, but the person they consistently are leaves you hungry between appearances, and each appearance resets the evidence you had gathered against them. Labeling yourself as understanding or not very demanding makes the arrangement sound chosen. That label protects you. It keeps you from admitting how much of the friendship relies on your fear of letting silence answer without ever testing what mutual care would demand. That is the logic of this skewed accounting. One thoughtful message purchases another financial year of emotional underfunding. You count intentions as deposits and cancellations as unfortunate weather. All the while, that unpaid balance quietly becomes your normal standard for what friendship costs. Withdrawing effort often feels cruel, disloyal, or manipulative. Continuing requires you to disappear in increasingly polite ways, but stopping forces you to acknowledge exactly what you've lost. Eventually, your reliability becomes the structural pillar of the friendship. They assume you will reconnect, forgive, and arrange, and you become terrified that stopping any of those jobs will reveal there was absolutely nothing beneath the friendship once your labor is removed. For some people, staying traces back to early relationships. Closeness depended on being agreeable, useful, or unusually patient with an adult whose attention arrived according to their own needs and whose approval felt necessary to keep the connection secure at all times. A child in that pattern learns to monitor the other person's availability rather than expect mutuality. Asking for equal care risks disappointment, irritation, or the terrifying discovery that the connection simply goes quiet. When they stop doing all the reaching themselves, the connection simply goes quiet. They become highly skilled at initiating, soothing, and making excuses. They turn their own effort into a bridge that keeps important people reachable when they drift away, even though the distance was never theirs to create and should not be theirs to repair. Teachers call them thoughtful. Relatives praise their loyalty. The ability to tolerate imbalance receives deep social approval long before anyone asks whether that loyalty feels mutual or if it has quietly become another word for endurance. Through repetition, inconsistent attention becomes the foundational shape of the friendship. You work harder whenever closeness weakens because effort is the tool that once restored contact. One version of this pattern is often described as fawning, preserving connection by accommodating the other person so thoroughly that disappointment, anger, and direct needs are edited out before they can threaten the relationship or reveal how unequal it is. It works like holding a heavy door open for someone who keeps wandering away. Instead of letting it close, you stand there with an aching arm, convinced that moving would be the reason they never returned, while they don't even realize you're still waiting. When a friend gives very little, two voices collide. The present says, "Notice the pattern." But the earlier lesson says, "Try harder, ask less, and do not become the reason this connection ends." Their occasional warmth then feels like confirmation rather than an interruption. The part of you trained by inconsistency treats relief as proof of love, overlooking how much waiting produced it and mistaking the end of uncertainty for actual security. Carrying the friendship alone once felt safer than discovering who would remain when you finally put your side down. Stopping the work reveals whether the connection was ever truly mutual.